Developing today, Prince William doubles down as his troubled younger brother blames him for his poor crowds on his UK visit. This is hilarious and extraordinary reporting from Shooter Scoop, who writes that Harry was disappointed by the tiny crowd in Nottingham, but that he is blaming William for dampening his return. And I think this adds to the delusion that we have increasingly seen from Prince Harry in recent days, because Rob Shooter writes, Prince Harry expected to be greeted like a hero. Instead, just 100 people showed up at that Nottingham visit. We know, of course, it's where he announced this £1.1 million donation to children in need. He looked gutted. One witness tells Shooter Scoop you could see it in his face when he realised how small the crowd was. But here's the key line. Behind the scenes, Harry is pointing the finger at his brother. And this from a palace insider to Rob Shooter, who used to work for the royal family. Harry's convinced William stacked his own schedule with rival charity events to pull focus. He feels undercut at every step. While Harry gamely played with children using balloon swords, friends say the thin crowd weighed heavily on him. He still wants to believe he connects with the public, but this shook him. He thinks William made sure of that. Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network, joins me now. Brittany, isn't this just an extraordinary insight into the psyche of Prince Harry? In that revolting tell-all Guardian interview, he just moved forward with total delusion. The British public love me, the British public adore me, but then when he's asked to justify the tiny crowd numbers that showed up in Nottingham, which were in total contrast to when he made his first official appearance within the royal family alongside Meghan Markle there, he blames William. And I think that says a lot about where his head is at.
It really does, Dan, because when it comes to Harry, he just needs to accept the reality that he's not a working royal anymore. He made that choice. We didn't make it for him, he did. And so it's just going to be the case that William, Catherine, and especially once the Wales's kids get older, will attract far more crowds than Harry. And some people might have not have known Harry was going there, but I'm just going to guess that most people just didn't care. Like there just wasn't that much interest. Sure, there was a lot of press there. I mean, if I was press, like I went to get some pictures of him at the courthouse a couple of months ago. And I mean, people get their stuff because they want the royal drama, but Harry is not the draw that he used to be. And some people just wanted to see a famous person. Like that's sort of what a lot of people want to do as well. So this idea that there was going to be this huge crowd for him is just plain delusion at this point.
Yeah, indeed. Then, of course, we get into William's psyche, Brittany, which is actually very, very different. And of course, we had this reporting earlier in the week from Charlotte Scobie, as I call her now. She's the editor at large for the Mail on Sunday, but she has been leading the charge within the British mainstream media and especially within the Mail group of newspapers to rehabilitate Prince Harry. But what was interesting is she also had a take about how William feels about this. And her piece was actually headlined, if you mention him, he will throw you out of the room. And she says that William is more determined than ever to cut Harry out of his life, and he has been driven to rage by this brazen plan to return by Prince Harry. And what's interesting is he says, and this is something we have obviously been reporting for some time, but she brings some colour to this, Brittany. I've always described it as William wants to exile Prince Harry. He wants to leave Prince Harry in exile. Whereas she describes this as William and some members of the royal family deciding to make Harry like a non-person, which is something that, for example, the late Queen Mother did when it came to the former king, the Duke of Windsor, following his exile. But I'm going to get your reaction. Let's just listen to how Charlotte Scobie, Griffith, summed this up on GB News. Big news! Outspoken is now available as a podcast too. So please do subscribe wherever you get yours, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and make sure you rate and review. I'll take 5 stars, if you may.
Well, long story short, I was told this week by somebody who would know that William is back at the point where he would throw somebody out of the room if they brought up the name Harry in his presence. The background to this is that William, of course, when this all kicked off 5-6 years ago, was incensed and full of rage. And at one point, actually, he was very sad and he was grieving for his brother. But then he got to the point for quite a long time now where he was indifferent and he considered Harry what the royal family call a non-person, which was a classic phrase coined by the Queen Mother, which means somebody who just doesn't get mentioned in front of working members of the royal family. They're so beneath contempt that they are just exiled from the conversation, a non-person. Wow. And William was comfortable in this zone, but what's happened now is, of course, Harry's back in the country. Harry's seeing his father. Aides are having to have discussions with William about their events clashing, which has happened all of this week. And of course, you know, William is furious. He's in no mood to repair relations with his brother at all. And yeah, he would throw somebody out of the room if they mentioned his name.
I mean, Brittany, quite a lot for you to pick up on there, but it isn't a surprise to me at all, as I have been very clear on in my reporting. William believes that Harry should be treated as a royal exile. He should never return. And so, yeah, I guess that does mean he is a non-person. And of course, we have seen all of these witches in the media say, oh, William is the one who's so horrible. But sometimes, Brittany, there are consequences to actions. And Harry was very clear that he would lose William if he crossed those red lines. And of course he did. But what do you make of this new reporting about how William is actually feeling about all of this?
Well, I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense, Dan, because at this point, Harry is no longer part of the monarchy. He no longer has really or should have dynastic implications. And so for William, the focus is on his family, his future role, and the monarchy itself. And Harry is just sort of an annoyance. And it's something where it's best if you don't talk about him because then it brings up feelings. It's frustrating, I'm sure, in many different ways. But again, this goes to the effect of why certain boundaries need to be put in place, certain hard lines need to be set in place for Harry because William is just going to keep doing what he's doing because he's actually a working royal. So Harry can do whatever the tour things and the charity events he wants. It doesn't really matter because William's doing the actual work of the monarchy and Harry's basically on a glorified press tour. And so because of that, William is not worried in the slightest in many ways. He doesn't even really probably care in some ways about the press attention as much as Harry does or obsesses about it quite as much. But the challenge always is, and this is why I say the titles must be stripped and probably places in the line of succession. Harry is inserting himself into places that he should not be, particularly, you know, when it comes to meeting with Zelensky and those sorts of things. And so it's best for the monarchy if they make the really hard lines clear. And I'm sure that's what William really wants, but he needs his father to move on that. And Charles just simply doesn't seem like he wants to, although should have more evidence now that, given the Guardian article, that that's the direction they need to go in.
But the thing is, Brittany, Harry is, again, I'm going to use that word, so delusional because he, even at this point, believes that he can make demands. And what I find so shocking about this is that he has realized that all of his actions, and let's be honest, the actions of his wife over the past 6 years, or even longer, to be honest, have really cemented a feeling that the British public have about him, and it's not a positive feeling. It's clearly a deeply negative one. But he still thinks that he can be saved, and that it's his papa who has the responsibility to somehow turn around a public mood, a strong public feeling, which has made him one of the least popular members of the royal family. I think it can't happen. I think even if there is some type of acknowledgement from Charles publicly, it's not going to change how the British public feel. Because actually, the British public have far more loyalty to the memory of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip than they even do the current reigning monarch. But this is how Charlotte Griffiths, who, again, just a quick reminder, she has acted as Harry's propagandist now for nearly a year, gets information fed directly to her by his friends in the UK. This is how she explains what Harry wants from the king.
A lot. They do disagree a lot. So I think Charles may well encourage William, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I do know something that Harry wants is some kind of public acknowledgement. You know, on his shopping list of dream scenarios coming back to this country and spending more time here, I think it would be nice, or he would like Charles to in some way acknowledge him or kind of forgive him in public to encourage the rest of the public to do the same. And this is what the Queen, the late Queen, famously did. Before she died, she basically addressed the nation and she gave a speech saying, you know, please welcome Camilla as Queen Consort when I'm gone. And that kind of paved the way for what we now do, which is called Camilla the Queen, full stop. And the atmosphere then was Camilla was still completely hated, the nation wasn't behind her at all. But when you have somebody that you really respect, you know, sort of permitting you to like somebody like the Queen did with Camilla and like Charles could do with Harry, that could move him on several steps in his very slow burning quest to re-ingratiate himself with the country. But I mean, unless William turns around and sanctions him, I mean, you know, and permits the country to get behind him when he's king, it's not going to last very long.
I mean, I just think, Brittany, it's not going to work even if it happened.
No, and I think actually the relationship that Harry needs probably the most forgiveness from in some ways is a relationship with his brother, and William just is not going to give him that. And think about it this way as well. If Harry had had a huge success in Hollywood, if him and Meghan Markle were raking in the millions, they had numerous hit shows or movies or podcasts or what have you, would Harry really need or want to do this sort of attempting to get the popularity back tour? No, he probably wouldn't. He's doing this because he failed. And if Harry had done things correctly, they could have still left the royal family. They could have still set up some of what they've done in Hollywood. But if they had not compromised their relationship with the royal family by sharing secrets and sharing private conversations and making salacious and unfounded accusations against members of the royal family, they might be more successful right now. But they decide to go about it the worst way possible. And as a result, they have this terrible public reputation. And an apology from Charles or an apology from William or whatever is not Harry's problem, because he's the one who needs to apologize, not just to his father and his brother, but argue to the British people as well. And Harry just can't simply seem to do that.
Roy Anika in the Sunday Times, and again, just so people know, she gets fed her information directly from both William and Harry's camp. Her take on this was very much along the lines of Prince William can't forgive Harry. But she did add that a brief reunion with King Charles is superficially good for the firm, but the true test is whether the two brothers can ever reconcile. Again, I just argue that is not going to happen. And she wrote in the Sunday Times, when the king announced his cancer diagnosis in February last year, Harry flew to London from California for a 30-minute meeting with his father. Charles is still undergoing weekly cancer treatment, and a friend of the king said over recent years the palace has become more and more exasperated when every meeting, call or Christmas card gets briefed to the media with commentary on potential meetings between them. But it gets harder and harder to explain to the public why you would not make time to see your son. There is a recognition that people want to see a thawing. Now, Brittany, can I just interrupt before we go on with that? Where is this coming from? Like, I'm in the United Kingdom. What friend of the king sees this? There is literally, I can promise you, Brittany, and remember, I'm very in touch with public opinion in the United Kingdom and always have been because of my roles at, you know, major populist newspapers and now running this channel. And there are demands on the king in other areas. I would argue that the biggest demand on the king is about trying to actually assert what he really feels about Christianity as the Church of England, and his sort of desire at the moment to increasingly push the religion of Islam. But let's leave that to one side, Brittany, because what I can tell you there definitely is some type of big public demand for Harry to reconcile with the king. So I don't know who's briefing the king of this.
Yes, because we've heard this in other places too. I think Valentine Lowe had some sort of quote about the situation as well, seeming leaning towards, well, the king is hearing that, reconciliation is good. And like from a personal perspective, again, there needs to be two sides to this, the personal and the dynastic. And when it comes to the personal relationship, I can understand where there might be some elements somewhere that would be interested in that, but maybe just more in the royal family. This might just be a bubble within the palace that is sometimes there, or perhaps the media itself. Because if you think about it, if Harry is back more, that generates more headlines, that generates more toxicity and conflict and those sorts of things, and that sells papers, let's be honest. And so there could definitely be an element within the newspaper industry itself where there is an interest in continuing and perpetuating this royal drama for headlines. And so I don't know where Charles is hearing this from. I just don't really think there's that much interest there. I don't really hear anybody talking about it when I talk about the royal stuff. So I just don't know quite where they're getting this, but do the newspapers maybe have a vested interest? That's a possibility.
And then this friend of the king goes on to tell the Sunday Times, the king loves his son and will have been aching to see him when he could. But this is an olive branch wrapped in a test. If any details of the meeting emerge or there is commentary from Harry's camp, it will be back to square one. Well, I'm sorry, Brittany. Then it is back to square one. Because, of course, in the Guardian article, I would argue there were clear implications about what happened in the meeting. There were clear implications from Prince Harry that he was informed by his father that his health was very bad and that it's possible he may not even be on Earth for more than a year, which, of course, we hope is not true. But the reality is what Harry said to the Guardian really did make that very clear. And so even according to the king's friends, Brittany, Harry has already failed the test. But first, in today's digital world, your online freedom and safety have never been more under threat, whether it's state overreach, tracking by big tech, or cyber criminals lurking on public Wi-Fi. Indeed, in the UK, just this week, we've now seen many popular sites and important content, even my news reporting here on Outspoken, even important speeches in the House of Commons censored entirely because of the government's so-called new Online Safety Act. You will have heard, I'm sure, in this discussion, lots of people saying you need to get a VPN to protect yourself and still access all your favorite content. Well, guess what? I have the perfect solution. It's Surfshark. By far the world's best VPN that protects your identity and secures your data. But the great thing is Surfshark is actually so much more than a VPN, and you can go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark to secure your data, protect your freedom, and support Outspoken at the same time. Now look at this. Surfshark's Clean Web feature blocks ads, trackers, malware, and phishing links so you can browse safely without being spied on. And it makes the experience so much easier and more pleasant too. Need to access certain apps or websites without VPN interference, like your banking app, for example? Well, Surfshark's bypasser feature handles that with ease. And if your VPN connection ever drops, Surfshark's kill switch immediately disconnects your device from the internet, keeping your data safe at all times. Plus, with dynamic multi-hop, you can route your connection through 2 different countries at once, doubling your encryption and making tracking nearly impossible. This also means you can freely switch beyond your favorite country lock shows with the click of a button. So you can be watching effectively your favorite TV shows or sport from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. There are other benefits of Surfshark too. You can use it on unlimited devices, meaning your entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. And with over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, there is a world of choice at your fingertips. And I know for lots of you, this will be your first time using a VPN, but the great news is that Surfshark offers you 24/7 customer service. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark. And what's more, this is really important. Surfshark is so confident it's the best VPN in the world. Trust me, it is. I use it every single day, that you can give it a try for a full 30 days. And if you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken or use the code OUTSPOKEN at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. But now, back to the show.
He definitely did, Dan. He totally and completely bombed this test completely. Harry's sort of thing with The Guardian, the way he should have done this article is stick with the Invictus Games. Don't talk about politics, which apparently he did, and he has views, which is a little scary. Don't talk about your family. Don't talk about your wife. Don't talk about particular things that distract from what you're attempting to do, which is promote the Invictus Games and yourself as some sort of folk hero to them. Harry failed in that effort. And I think the big test is not just talking about the meeting that he had with Charles overall. It's, can he stop talking about the family in general? Can he avoid particular topics and keep things private? But no, Harry proves once again that he's fully willing to share his opinions, share all the dirty laundry, everything. He's cannot hold himself back. And so I think Charles needs to take stock of this. So does the rest of the royal family. Harry just proves yet again, he simply can't be trusted to keep confidences. And that's what the royal family is. It's about keeping confidences. And Harry and his wife, they just can't do it. They have to make money, they have to get attention, and they can only do it by ragging on his family. And that's the only thing they got.
Indeed, indeed. Because, I mean, Brittany, for example, from Shoe to Scoop, who, as I say, used to work for the royal family, has very good contacts within it, said of Harry's Guardian interview, Harry doesn't realize how humiliating this is for Charles. That was from a furious palace insider. You don't win back your father by trashing him on the record again. Another senior royal source who Rob Shooter says hissed to him. Harry's mouth is his biggest problem. Every time he speaks, it costs him another ounce of goodwill. He cannot help himself. It's like an addiction. He craves the spotlight more than he craves his family. Courtiers say they are bracing for Harry to claim he was misquoted, but they aren't buying it. That excuse won't fly anymore. Palace Insider fumes, or Palisade fumes, sorry. We know what he said, and so does the world. This is self-sabotage, pure and simple. And Rob Shooter says the bottom line is Harry insists he wants healing, but with every interview he makes sure reconciliation slips further away. So, I mean, Brittany, Shooter scoops sources within the royal family very much suggesting that the reaction to the interview has been almost catatonic. But what's going to be interesting is, does that get briefed into the mainstream media? Because what I am very much picking up at the moment, Brittany, I'm not sure if you are too, is that the mainstream media are very much on the bandwagon of a reunion. You know, we've seen the pressure from Roy Anika, we've seen the pressure from Camilla Tomine, we've seen the pressure from Liz Jones and Amanda Patel, all of these main columnists being sent out on behalf of their papers to push the idea that there is this demand for reconciliation.
Yes, and that just doesn't seem to be really the case with the people, but Harry had an opportunity here. He really did. He had you could say, a fairly good week last week. No abysmally bad headlines, but he sabotaged it. He cannot keep his mouth shut. And you can't really, again, there's like two big things I come to when it comes to the reconciliation. Obviously, when it comes to the personal side, Harry needs to admit fault and needs to be able to keep his mouth shut. And he can't do either of those things. He proves that in the Guardian interview. And so to have a relationship with him, it just simply can't be done at this point. And again, with the news outlets sort of pushing this, it's just kind of weird. You're just sort of wondering why. I mean, it could again be Charles's personal desire to have a relationship with his son and grandchildren. But this has greater implications here. This has governmental and dynastic implications. If Charles does reconcile with Harry, is he going to push him into some sort of royal role or something like that? Again, this is why the boundaries of what can happen should be very, very clear here. Because I think Harry definitely wants back into the royal fold. And Charles wants a personal relationship with Harry. But beyond that, that is going to be William's problem if Charles does that. That's why William must be part of whatever reconciliation happens in many ways, because it will probably impact him more than it does Charles in the long run. And so these things have to be carefully managed, and Harry is just simply a loose cannon. You cannot trust him. And Harry, if he wanted to have a nice olive branch and a good reconciliation with his family, again, he's stepped on his own landmine that he planted. And so It's just exasperating in many ways.
Brittany, the other reason, though, that King Charles has to be particularly careful with all of this is there was this shock new survey from earlier in the week revealing that the support for the British monarchy has hit a record low. Here's some analysis from some of our favourites. According to Taz, wrote, support for the monarchy hits a record low, with King Charles supporting the World Economic Forum, showing support for Keir Starmer and mentioning Islam at every opportunity, even on Christian holidays. I'm not surprised. Add in the new meeting with Harry, it will only decline. And then Lee Cohen, who's your way, Brittany, you know, he's in America, but he's a very good royal commentator, says, as a monarchist, this saddens me profoundly, but I hope the palace is listening. Frankly, I think the decision to consider reconciling with Prince Harry is catastrophic and could figure into the reasons behind the plunge in public opinion. Thoughts? And Brittany, you posted, support for the monarchy reportedly hits record lows. Can't say I'm completely surprised. The younger generations especially aren't as interested in the monarchy. That will change with time, but the question is, can the monarchy survive until then? And again, we have to lean into a conversation about this, Brittany, because it does feel as if the mainstream media are just like, nothing to see here. You know, everyone loves what King Charles is doing. Everyone's behind the idea of welcoming Harry back into the fold. And these very, very worrying survey results for someone like me and you, Brittany, who are royalists, who are monarchists, shows that strategy isn't working. I would argue, Brittany, the mainstream media doesn't have the same power that they used to change the narrative. So this sort of attempt to tell us that white is black, for example, when it comes to how the British public feel about Harry and Meghan, isn't working. But I think Tash is also right to point out that the king has really serious questions to answer in terms of how he's leaning into Islam and ignoring his role as head of the Church of England. So do you want to go into a little bit further, Brittany, what you think could be behind these really devastating new figures?
Right. It is an interesting topic of discussion, Dan, because obviously I can't speak to everything going on in the UK, but the growth in multiculturalism and so many immigrants and those sorts of things, as those immigrants have children, sometimes they just aren't as connected to the monarchy. And so you do have this sort of question, are the next generation going to be interested? Because the huge thing about the monarchy, and this is true in all over Europe, is that the monarchies represent a connection to history and the culture of the country they represent. And so I think sometimes the more you're trying to adopt every culture and every practice or whatever to try to expand the reach of the monarchy, you actually sort of contract it. Because what you really should do is stand on the principles of what the initial monarchy was founded on, whatever that happens to be. Obviously, that changes over time, but connecting it to history and culture and making that a huge part of your platform, I think, is really, really important. And younger generations in general aren't always as connected to the monarchy. And that comes with time too. A lot of younger people aren't as interested in history, and that becomes an interest over time as they get older and they start to see more things in the world. I think that's definitely the case here too. But the big question for the monarchy is, if it loses some of those young people, can it recapture them, or are they just gone forever? Again, so many issues here, but it's definitely very worrying and something the monarchy should take much more seriously. I think you'll see a surge in interest as the Wales's kids get into their older teen years and early 20s. I think you'll see a surge of interest as young people go, are interested in the young royals. But I think, unfortunately, because Queen Elizabeth's very long reign, the age of Charles and everything, the British monarchy, at least to me, just feels very old. I hate to say that, but I think
And I
that's part of the
guess
problem
that's
too.
one of the reasons, Brittany, as well, why William has a different strategy. And so when, the likes of Tominay and Liz Jones and Platel and all of the Wicked Witches, in the mainstream media keep attacking William, they're maybe not realizing that he does have a grander plan here, because he does realize that the monarchy has to modernize in order to keep the young people engaged. Now, of course, traditionalists like us, Brittany, will have a problem with some of that. Actually, no, I want my monarch in Buckingham Palace. I want a whole load of family members on the balcony. You know, there might be these individual things that we disagree with, but when it comes to the broader strategy of actually focusing on bigger events, being far less obsessed with like the fact that, you know, the court circular says that this person has done this many ribbon cuttings. I'm sort of on board with that because we're in a different world where actually the way to engage young people in the media, in the monarchy, is going to be through different forms of communication like social media. And that is whether you like it or lump it, Brittany, it is just a reality of the world that we're now in.
Yes. And I will say, Dan, I watch all the European monarchies. I feel like Catherine and William, their social media game could be stepped up a bit more. I feel like the Danes have one of the best photographers for their social media. They get a lot of really interesting pictures that they post on their Instagram stories and those sorts of things. Catherine and William only post a few sometimes, and sometimes they're multiple pictures together. And the Spanish, what they do is they have a videographer follow them on every single engagement and they post it. And so I see a lot of innovation in the other monarchies. Catherine and William and the Brits are sort of getting there, but it's been a very slow approach. And while that is caution is always good, I feel like they just need to start increasing it a bit more, get more innovative. We've had some really interesting videos. I mean, the Brits are getting there a bit too, but from Sweden and those sorts of things. And so the more the Brits can get there, I think the better off things will be. But you have to modernize in a way where you don't lose the core aspect that's so important to the monarchy, which is the history, the culture, the heritage, everything it represents. The modernization has to be done in a way that captures those things while making it more approachable to a younger audience too. I think definitely the kids will help there because kids obviously connect with kids.
Exactly.
That's going to be huge.
Come on, we need you to become little young adults, you know. But that's the thing. Look, people always do say this, Brittany. You know, there was that period in the sort of early noughties where it was like, oh, the monarchy's feeling very old because remember there wasn't much from Prince William and Harry at that point because there had been this tacit agreement to leave them alone really and let them deal with the grief of the death of Princess Diana. Things do turn around, and that's why I think obviously George, Charlotte and Louis are so important. But again, it's another reason, Brittany, just the last thing I'll say, it's another reason why we should be very angry at Prince Harry, why we shouldn't be trying to invite him back into the fold, because remember, he was always part of the plan. He was always part of the slim down monarchy plan, and his children were going to be on that balcony and be a big part of it. And he screwed that up because of the ego of his wife. So again, that's another reason why Harry has really left the royal family pretty light, you know, in terms of talent. But fascinating discussion. Of course, if you want so much more of this, Brittany's brilliant YouTube channel is the Royal News Network. Really recommend you subscribe to that today. She also tweets on X. And of course, if you do want first access to our discussions here on Outspoken, twice the length of what you've just watched, all you need to do is sign up to my Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. You will get first access to our Royal Uncancelled After Show Monday to Friday with no advertising whatsoever. You can watch either live or on demand. Substack's a really important platform for me. It's a community, firstly, so you can message me directly on there. We have live chats going on, lots of stuff like that. But also, it is a free speech platform. I'm protected there from big tech cancellation. I am protected there from lawfare. That's why I keep banging on about it, because it's such an important community for me to be a part of. So please do join the action. www.outspoken.live.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.